So, yes, what's going on with some Jasmy? Well, let's see what's going on with this. All right, so Jasmy, I don't think is in the top 100 yet. It will be. At one point, was last time around was at 0.8 of a penny before it got put in the Binance innovation zone. And hopefully, you guys see my tweets in the recent video about that. So again, guys, back to this whole thing of CMC. You do see that we're at extreme greed, 81. We're at an overall crypto market of 1.59 trillion. Basically speaking, you know, we've seen higher than that. Actually, yeah, I just refreshed it. We're at 1.6 trillion. I think we've even been slightly higher than that. Again, 81 extreme greed. Wow. And I think we've even touched 44K BTC before. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens, you know, during the show or after. But basically speaking, I'm going to pull up my watch list. Let's see what's going on with our beloved Jasmy. All right. So, according to Mike Cornwell, it's running. Shout out to XXI Game. His Stratos is doing really well. 93 cents. Let's pull this up for Jasmy. Yes, Jasmy, not on the 1 hour, but on the 24 hour, up 9%, which is, you know, that's pretty good for Jasmy. 28% on the 7-day chart. All right. And let me just double check a couple settings. I know I unsure that. Last I checked on my Jasmy portfolio, I was like at 5,500 or something like that. Oh yeah, I got to do the dance up to 63, past 6,300. I'm now at $2,140 profit. Well, I should take my profits. No, I should not. Not yet, because you don't want to know something? If I take my profits right now, you think I'm going to be able to buy Jasmy as low as 0.003425? Not unless there's some massive crash. Not if there's not anything like that. So, you know, DCA'd into it a few times. I'm happy about this. And the way I look at it is I'm going to be that much more happy about this, especially when it comes to holding on. You know, if I waited this long, I can hold on a little bit longer. That's just me, not financial advice, but I thought I'd point that out. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to get into some coverage that we have for you guys. And this is from Neo X Tricks. So basically speaking, what does Neo have for us tonight? And I want to state this, Neo, you're a great content creator. Don't ever lose sight of what you're doing. Don't, you know, get fudded out by some of the criticism and so on. You keep doing you. I'm rooting for you all the way, 110%. And I think researchers should unite and support each other, not, you know, try to pull each other down or anything like that. If we're Jasmy Army, Navy, whatever you want to call it, come together and we lift each other up. Absolutely. And, you know, Neo, we appreciate you, man. Check this out from Neo. He's got some visuals. This is good stuff. So he posted this earlier today, a few hours ago, right? 4:23 p.m. Mountain Time. And he says something you guys kind of somewhat familiar with. SBI Holdings Japan has been part of a consortium bank in Japan for several years. True. Who has just entered the stablecoin market? Jasmy, of course. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've been talking about this. Don't you just love it when we go from speculation to confirmation? Say what you want. You know what I mean? I'm just one of many researchers. But you want to know something? I connect the dots just like anybody else who is passionate about this. Because I don't give him the FUD. I let the research speak for itself. And man, does it feel good, especially lately when it comes to Jasmy and seeing how it's doing. Going through all the FUD and seeing all those dumb comments on Crypto X, right? So it is rumored in the dens of the internet the SBI has been the main shareholder of Jasmy since the start. Would you like some confirmation about that? I'm sure you would. His CEO being a fan of blockchain, that would hardly, for instance, surprise him. I'm going to play this.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Jimmy, for the wonderful introduction. As Jimmy said, today is about the future. So I think it's great when we're talking about the future that my talk today will be about to the moon. That's the title. And first of all, I have to say, you know, to be frank, I'm so happy just over the last couple of days that I've actually heard pretty much all the themes that I'm about to talk about already being said in a number of the presentations that you guys have seen in the past couple of days. So I think this is going to end up being more of a summary of anything. But no, really, I'm going to be talking about to the moon. And it's kind of funny. I was expecting some people to have some groans and, like, oh my God, let's not hear anymore about the moon. But really, I think for those of you who aren't familiar with the phrase, to the moon has, I think, is the sole reason for over maybe 1 million face palms in the internet. Anytime somebody mentions this, it's one of those phrases that was coined in the cryptocurrency community thanks to the appreciation of price and everything that went sort of crazy bonkers after 2013. And then everybody thought cryptocurrencies was about making a lot of money by buying it and holding it like stocks and then just getting yourself rich. So basically, we've seen this sort of behavior in all the cryptocurrencies, right? There's no cryptocurrency has been is innocent of this type of hype cycle. And so you can see that this sort of mentality has unfortunately percolated throughout the entire ecosystem because everybody just wants, at the end of the day, just to get rich from buying cryptocurrencies. And I hope that one of the messages that you take home after these 3 days is that we're resetting all that, and we can stop thinking about getting rich and start thinking about how we actually build a new world economy and sort of making a new financial system. So, to be a little bit different, when people say to the moon, right? A lot of people will think about like, how do we get there? And that's kind of analogous to how do you build the rocket ship, right? Everybody thinks, how do we get off the ground? How do we design this rocket ship? How do we get into orbit, right? But I'd like to talk a little bit more today about our trajectory, right? The path. Because if you're any rocket scientists in the room, I don't know, I know there's at least one physicist somewhere, the trajectory kind of matters. Because the trajectory is literally what gets you to the moon or landing on the moon versus careening into the sun or into interstellar space. So when we talk about the trajectory or the path that we're going to take to the moon for the world of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, what do we mean? What's the most important thing? Does anybody have a guess? Yeah, well, similar. Growth. Generally speaking, growth, right? We have to talk about how do we grow. So let's talk about that. The kinds of growth. And some growths are healthy, some growths are not so healthy, right? So let's talk about the kind of growths which I think are kind of healthy for cryptocurrency, for Bitcoin, right? Organic growth is the kind that everybody should be familiar with. It's the kind of growth that nature creates, right? It's seeds getting blown around in the wind and into the biosphere and spreading that way. It's how, through society, common sense knowledge gets passed around. Like, that garlic is a very effective way to ward away vampires. That's the kind of knowledge that humankind spreads, passes along from society to society, and it spreads in an organic fashion. And of course, this is very healthy. And in cryptocurrency space, I'm sure you all know, organic growth is you telling your friends, telling your family that this is something you should look into. And this is, spreading the word, spreading the good word, right? It's like spreading a religion. The other kind of growth that I'd like to talk about that's healthy, although you might not think of it that way initially, is growth by what I call acquisition. This is kind of like taking over new territory, or if in a more peaceful, pacifist sense, imagine the early explorers as they went across the pond and went to North America. They brought with them plants, they brought with them birds and seeds and potatoes and diseases, right? So, but you can see how this sort of growth, conveyed by humankind accelerates the natural growth, the organic growth that nature gives us. And so this is also a healthy kind of growth. And I think this is what I want to focus on because as we've heard in the last couple of days, this kind of growth is when cryptocurrency expands beyond its borders and makes the territory larger, not just basically growing everybody's size of the pie or within the territory. So these are the healthy kinds of growth. What about the unhealthy kinds, right? There are definitely unhealthy kinds of growth, which unfortunately most of the world outside this room has been preoccupied with for the last 5 years, right? Besides, tumors are growth. Cancerous tumors are definitely a form of growth, and I think it's sort of goes without saying that kind of growth is sort of bad, right? So let's talk about the bad kinds of growth. The first one I'd like to categorize as infinite growth. It's more like a mindset. This is the mindset of speculators and hodlers, or as Craig calls them, hoodlers. I don't know why he pronounces it that way. It's obviously hodlers, which are people who basically buy the cryptocurrency, never sell, because they believe that the price of cryptocurrency, like an equity or like a stock, has no theoretical limits, right? The price of Google could go to infinity, technically. It's anywhere between 0 and infinity. So basically, this kind of growth just fosters a very, very dangerous and self-destructive mindset. All right, this is the kind of growth that Ponzi schemers like to exploit among people because they think that cryptocurrencies just will go up forever. Now, the other kind of growth is the other kind of negative growth is very, very important. And it's what I like to call loop-back growth, right? Loop-back is more like, it's like a negative feedback loop, or negative in the sense of like negative gamma. Negative and has a negative connotations, not the fact that it's going backwards, right? It's basically the kind of growth that we see brought about to us via ICOs, right? For instance, you come up with a white paper, and because of the cryptocurrencies, you use this idea and you sell it to a bunch of people who you convince is a great idea, and they give you some money. And then you use that to basically create a token, which comes out of nowhere because of cryptocurrencies. And then you promise developers that you can pay them in this cryptocurrency, which it's going to be pre-sale price. We're going to get it under the market. And then when you develop this platform, you're going to be able to sell it and make yourself all rich. And then if it doesn't work out, because maybe the white paper was silly and it was a dumb idea to begin with, then what you do is all the founders dump all their shares and they rinse and repeat. They do that again. Now, that picture I did not Photoshop, all right? So any sort of perceived image that you see in there is not placed by me. I actually found that searching Google for infinite and loop back growth and snakes eating their own tails. So if you Google that yourself, you'll find that image. So I did not place anything, any sort of subconscious imagery there at all. But, but let me throw some numbers out to you, right? There is a certain project which initially raised $18 million US dollars, $18 million US dollars of capital. So that's real money coming out of the real economy. And that $18 million was turned into a token. And that token's whole premise was to create other tokens, ICOs. And then that spawned an entire ecosystem now, right? And a whole bunch of stuff, smart contracty stuff. And that whole ecosystem, how much is it today? It's $12 billion in market cap. Now, either that means market capitalization is a totally silly term, and it shouldn't be used to measure anything in crypto space, or it means that this thing has increased 1,000 times in value. 1,000 times value. Do you think that this particular platform has brought about $12 billion worth of real economic value to the planet Earth, to society? I mean, honestly, besides the value proposition is on two things, really, two real value propositions. One, the sum total of all the hopes and dreams of a lot of brilliant and really smart developers and forward thinkers, right? The sum total of all that. And then the second thing, which gives it value, is CryptoKitties, right? So I don't know about you, but I think an internet trading game which incentivizes mutation of and crossbreeding of like retarded-looking cats is not worth $12 billion. So maybe it's really $12 billion of everybody's hopes and dreams. In which case, what does that sound like? It sounds like it could be, just a bubble, right? So these kind of negative growths create bubbles. And I know our friend and scholar colleague Dominic Frisby had a good talk yesterday, and he said that bubbles are important. And I do agree that the economy goes in cycles, and therefore there will be bubbles. But if the bubble gets too big, if the bubble gets too large and affects too much of society, then you have systematic failure. And we all know what that looks like, right? And we all want to avoid that, all of us, even governments, everybody want to avoid that again, right? So if we want to grow our community, we have positive growth. We got to think about the first two positive types of growth. So in Bitcoin, what does that type of growth cost? What do we have to pay to get this sort of good growth? I mean, what is fueling this growth in the economy? And in Bitcoin space, that growth is fueled by something called, proof of work. But I went ahead of myself, sorry. This is the summary of the type of growth that we want. Is we want basically a rooted economy, right? I want you to look at that picture and I want you to really take it to heart, right? Bitcoin should be like a very old oak tree, right? It should be something that has its fruits, leaves, branches, everything in the above ground space, but it should derive all its value, its nutrition, from this huge root system underground. Now, what does that mean in economics speaking? Economically speaking, it's most healthy if the ecosystem derives most of its value from businesses which have nothing to do with cryptocurrency, like the fisheries and supply chain businesses of Stefan over there from Norway, of the guys at Brewdog, right? These guys are doing, craft beer. If these people, these businesses come into the system, these are the roots growing, and that's healthy growth, right? We don't want, a tree does not stand if it's just something, growing on the surface. And so what I mean is, like, we don't need more exchanges. We don't need more financial products. We don't need more ICOs, which are just easier ways of moving money around, because Bitcoin is not about money, all of it, right? It's really about growing an economy. An economy is not all about money. Money is not for money itself. So back to proof of work. For those of you who are new to Bitcoin, proof of work is kind of analogous to, let's say, the competitive constructive competition, right? And the best analogy I can think of is like the one that happened between Edison and Tesla, between AC current and DC current in the turn of the century. And so this was a very, very violent, very, very, let's guess, messy. There was a lot of mudslinging. It's very similar to cryptocurrency space if you think about it. Of these two, one more of an entrepreneur, one more of a scientist, and they were really fighting over the standards for electricity back then. And this competition was actually very positive if you look at it, 100 years in retrospect, because if it wasn't for this sort of like relentless competition, we wouldn't have gotten this, the electrical standards we enjoy today, and we wouldn't be able to come and arrive at the almost optimal solution. So proof of work is something in Bitcoin that is exactly that kind of competition. But of course, those of other projects in cryptocurrencies always have the criticism that proof of work costs too much energy, right? Because it is a lot of electricity, and you'll see posts such as this one crop up where some proof of, or non-proof of works cryptocurrencies. I'll blow it up for you there. Basically comparing how much electricity Bitcoin mining actually uses, and what if we could use that electricity for something better instead? Wouldn't that be great? Because that's a lot of electricity being wasted. What is it? Czech Republic, like the entire country of Czech Republic in 1 year, Bitcoin mining costs that much electricity. So that sounds like a big waste, right? Right? But waste is the subjective term in that statement. What if, first thing, what if you compare what is Bitcoin trying to achieve here? Bitcoin is trying to become, or it could stand to become a global ledger, meaning a global financial system. It doesn't need to replace all the existing financial systems, but it could be one that reaches all countries and all peoples of the world equally. And if we compare it in that sense, then we're really comparing Bitcoin versus like the entire financial system of planet Earth. And then if we do that, what's a fair comparison? So Bitcoin was about 68 terawatts per year, right? Terawatts per year. So if we compare this to the banking industry, that means we're going to add up all the servers of all 17,000 banks on planet Earth, right? All the servers together. That's about 26 terawatt hours. All the branches, every office of Citibank, of Chase Manhattan, of Lloyd's. I took a while to think of a British bank. UBS, all their branch offices, all the power that goes into it, just keeping the lights on in their offices, all the ATMs over the entire world in every country. Or you take all that, you add that up, and the entire banking system costs about 100 terawatt hours per year. So it's still, Bitcoin is within the same magnitude, but it's still less. So that should be the true comparison. So when anybody tells you like it's wasting power, think about like, well, how much do banks use? That's your first sort of response. But more than that, as I alluded to earlier, the notion of waste. What is economic waste, right? Waste is just something that you haven't figured out how to use profitably yet. If anybody's from power engineering, power stations use waste heat from nuclear reactors to bootstrap other stuff, to do some other part of the system so that you increase the efficiency of the power generating station by using all your waste as much as you can, right, in a productive way. So let's think about how we can possibly use the waste electricity of Bitcoin mining. And I'm so glad that in this week, I've heard so many different applications of making Bitcoin mining more efficient, because there was a mining meeting on Tuesday, and there were so many great ideas that I'd love to share with you if you come and talk with me later. But if we think about if you could utilize the waste of Bitcoin mining, then basically you can kind of see proof of work mining as a sort of cooperative way of growing a tree, right? There's a lot of work that goes into sort of watering this sapling at first, and then a lot of people are going to waste a lot of cost, and this is a constant cost. You have to keep on, gardening this tree, but eventually, the gardeners who have a long-term view will eventually be able to reap the fruits of this growth, right? So if you see this initial watering cost as wasteful, well, then you're never going to get a tree, right? And another way of thinking of it, and this is a true story now. This is a story which was given to me when I was in Tokyo in one of the meetups by somebody who's actually in the space making this proposal. So what if, because Bitcoin proof of work mining incentivizes entrepreneurs, innovative entrepreneurs, to come up with more efficient ways to generate electricity, right? That's a fact. That's a simple fact. What better way to incentivize developments in power generation and other aspects of the human economy than to incentivize it directly, right? You don't really have to ask permission. You don't have to go to the government to ask for grants. You can develop better ways of coming up with power, or you can compete in other ways. You can get cheaper labor. China has statistically cheaper labor, or you can have natural resources, which was probably previous to Bitcoin not useful to the planet Earth, but now maybe those natural gas reserves, or well, actually that's kind of useful, but think of some other, maybe you have cold weather. Maybe in Greenland, nobody uses Greenland, but now maybe Greenland is a great place to do mining because it's very cold. You don't have to pay for power to sort of cool down your machines. But since the topic is the future, let's think a little bit more forward. What if because of Bitcoin proof of work mining one day, and a very innovative entrepreneur, like one of those Elon Musk types, thinks to himself, I can make drones, right? What if I created an army of drones and then just fly them to the moon? And what if this army of drones, what if I pair them with a 3D printer? And then I have this army of drones which have 3D printers, and it can gather sort of like silica and moon dust, and then make solar panels by themselves, right? What if then this whole army of drones creates an entire solar farm on the face of the moon? Power, solar power is pretty consistent there. There's no weather, there's no clouds. You get 100% efficiency, and you get the sun shining on it, 24 hours a day. And all you have to do is plug up some miners to that. And then this whole operation pretty soon funds itself. It pays for itself. It pays for the next launch to send supplies there. And pretty soon you have this huge power grid built by robots. And the next thing you know, right, when humans finally get to the moon, get off, do all the extra stuff that's needed to get a manned mission, the moon or Mars, we land, and we already have a working power grid. They plug in and they pay the robots in Bitcoin, right, for all their labor, right? This is the kind of stuff that Bitcoin brings, Bitcoin allows. So is it really a waste then? Is it really a waste that we incentivize people to use electricity in better and more innovative ways? I can't think of a better way to incentivize innovation than Bitcoin mining. I can't think of a better way to spend electricity rather than keeping branch offices of banks, operating. Although I do work at one, so I probably shouldn't. I may be out of a job. So that's where I'd like to leave it. I mean, I want everybody to think about the possibilities of an economic system or use of power which has positive externalities, right? And that's an economic term for those of you who are economists here. Positive externalities, the ability to basically derive positive side effects to your primary purpose, which is to secure the financial system in the future, is to basically produce all sorts of other stuff which is beneficial to mankind. Thank you.
Now, this guy you saw was in regards to SBI, right? You know the whole thing about SBI Japan, when it comes to Jasmy and so on. So I want to pull this up for you guys because, I mean, at the end of the day, got to make a point when it comes to this, right? So look at this for a second. And again, from the research, So something I want you to keep in mind. Bitpoint Japan. This is straight from SBI Holdings. Look what it says here. Let's pull up the branding just one more time. There we go. So you have this whole thing of Bitpoint Japan operates Bitpoint, a crypto asset exchange chosen by a wide range of customers. Talks about all this stuff that we, for the most part, most of us know. Talks about, for instance, wide variety of services, trading methods, meets the needs of wide range customers. And you even saw that particular gentleman, CEO of SBI, talking about, it's not like we need any more exchanges, but you do like the idea that he recognized the opportunities of what we just presented. So under this umbrella, look what it says. In addition to spot trading of crypto assets, the company, as in Bitpoint Japan, offers the Kashit Fuyasu lend and increase. I'm not pronouncing that right. I know. Crypto asset lending service, Japan's first sumitate package accumulation that allows customers to purchase multiple assets in bulk and crypto asset staking service. In addition to major assets such as Bitcoin, you do see Jasmy part of the list, right? And like it also says, allowing customers to manage their assets according to their individual investment styles. Bitpoint Japan supports a wide range of investors by providing user-oriented trading tools. And we know the gist. We've been through this before. But when you get more into the profile about this, look at this for a second. Who's one of the shareholders? It's SBI Group, 100%. So when you hear all this talk about when people say, well, I haven't seen anything legitimate about a close-knit thing with Jasmy and SBI, you just got to look more into it. Bitpoint is definitely a thing. We know that Bitpoint is especially a thing when it comes to Mr. Genki Oda, right? Because of that whole connection. We cover that numerous times. But when we talk about Genki Oda's position, not just in Bitpoint, but also in SBI Japan, is still crucial. So SBI Group, and those examples that you saw in the video, I mean, say what you want, but that guy's completely, all, gung-ho, bought in for the whole notion of what they're trying to do in Japan, especially when it comes to crypto. Date of establishment, 2016. What was also a date of establishment when it came to Jasmy? Well, yeah, Jasmy, 2016. Awfully, call it more than coincidence. Okay? Let me show one more thing to you. This is not a video. All right? So getting more into this before we, share some notes with you. SBI Group launches crypto asset fund for Japanese investors. Take you back in a time machine all the way back to 2021, December 2021. This is, in my opinion, when we're going from the height of the last bull market to, I guess you could say things going the other direction. But you also got to keep in mind, Jasmy went public, basically speaking, in 2021. So there's that as well. SBI Crypto Asset Fund consists of 7 cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin at the time, Ethereum, Litecoin, XRP, so on and so forth. Pulling this up, SBI Group allowed then for general Japanese investors to purchase cryptocurrencies via its newly launched crypto asset fund. So say what you want, even back then, because we're talking about, Bitcoin spot ETFs and so on. Even then, you had these types of things, but in Japan. The fund is composed of 7 different cryptos. We named some of those, like Chainlink, Ripple, right? Crypto asset fund to be traded and operated by the SBI Alternative Fund, established December 2nd, 2021, basically. But it's all there, and you can look through it and so on. And my key thing is, when we talk about reaching this whole thing of mass adoption, you got to keep in mind there's this statement. In addition to contributing to Japan's crypto adoption, because, mass adoption, SBI continues to spread its reach to other jurisdictions. Most recently, the company, well, at least back in 2021, invested to Singaporean crypto exchange named CoinHako. What about all the talk we've been mentioning recently in regards to Singapore? right? Koinhako received SBI's funding soon after it received regulatory approval from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Remember how many times we made those connections? So my bottom line for you is all the things we've been talking about for a while, from what people want to call speculative to actual, let's be honest, confirmation, in my opinion. I mean, jumping into, back to this reminder from Neo, okay? It's crazy because SBI Holdings Japan, part of that consortium bank in Japan, for what? Many years. We just entered a stablecoin market, Jasmy, of course, and look at what they're trying to do for both, like locally, local banks, Japanese yen denominated stablecoins, pairings create massive volume, and that's why I'm never going to shut up about it. Now, in conclusion, before we get into something else, I want to state this. In my notes, keep in mind this whole thing that we just talked about, SBI Japan, and of course, Jasmy. Why is SBI Japan, of course, significant for Jasmy? Well, for numerous reasons. But the bottom line is, when we talked about Bitpoint, that listing on Bitpoint, SBI Holdings has a large, amount of financial services, of course, in Japan. Acquired a majority stake, of course, in cryptocurrency exchange Bitpoint Japan back in 2022. Of course, the article is from 2021, but I guess you could say solidified, went live beginning of 2022. Bitpoint lists, of course, Jasmy, and that made it available to a wider range, of course, of Japanese investors, and we've seen that. But now we're taking it one step further from that, going to this whole thing of this concept, this layer 2, scalability, right? Can't have issues of, problems with the network. Here's the point. This listing was crucial for Jasmy because it allowed them to gain more accessibility and, of course, broaden their reach for more potential adoption within just that. Japan, obviously. Now, there's a few more points I want to make. What about the potential for future collaboration? Well, with SBI's involvement in both Bitpoint and, of course, Jasmy, there's potential for further collaboration, of course, with those two specific entities. And listen to this for a second. This is going to include joint marketing initiatives. This is where a lot of you guys are like, finally, something that's about the marketing. Yeah. Technical partnerships, or even the development of new products and services leveraging both Jasmy's tech and, of course, SBI's financial expertise. This is where we get the whole thing of, do we have that plug? Do we have that connect when it comes to finance democracy? I think SBI Japan is basically the answer to that. Now, just a tad bit more, because I realize we lost a lot of people, and if anything, it's going to get chopped up anyway. You have to also keep in mind that SBI, of course, has a reputation. What kind of reach do they have? SBI is a well-respected and established financial institution in Japan. Let's face it, they are. Even when it comes to like XDC especially. With a large customer base and, of course, a significant amount of resources, is a big win for, of course, Jasmy. Their involvement, of course, with Jasmy lends credibility to is this a legitimate project? The answer would be yes. Why would SBI get involved with the likes of Jasmy, even not officially speaking, but when you look more into it, you see the connections. Well, it's crucial for not just SBI, but also Jasmy, because it's going to allow both of them to attract more of individual investors and also institutional investors. We talked about this as well. All right, 3 more things I just want to talk about for just a brief moment. This in itself, with the SBI plug, is going to allow for capital and more resources. Say what you want. We talk about, can Jasmy reach more of a broader base? The answer is yes. SBI financial backing could provide Jasmy specifically with access to additional capital and resources, and it's going to accelerate the development and expansion of both working groups. This includes funding for research, development, marketing, and team growth. And we've already seen what Jasmy's doing in regards to grants. So that's also a thing. SBI, you got to keep in mind, do have an extensive list of expertise in the field of finance and so on. But you have to keep in mind that SBI can share, even with Jasmy, to help them navigate the complex regulatory landscape. And if anything, Jasmy already has that experience anyway, because they already met all the regulatory compliance categories and guidelines from the get-go, hence Bitcoin of Japan. Now, what about a potential integration with SBI services? SBI offers a wider range of financial services that includes banking, securities, issuance, or insurance, I should say. You got to keep in mind, there's potential for Jasmy's tech involved with all this. And this is where I use the example of utility in motion. Maybe people get tired of me mentioning that. But Jasmy's tech, as in the PDL and so on, will very well be integrated with these services, even in the financial realm, creating innovative new offerings for various customers all over Japan. And let's face it, trying to break out into South Korea, Hong Kong, and so on. We know that. All right, so that's that particular area of the world. What about a global expansion? I'd be asking that all day long if I'm a Jasmy holder. So listen to this part. SBI does, in fact, have a global presence. We know that. We know they're not just only SBI Japan, right? But you got to keep in mind that they have, as an SBI, offices in various countries, of course, around the world. Their involvement, of course, with Jasmy could help project and expand its reach and attract interest from international investors and, of course, partners. Now, we know when it comes to some of these things that there's no guarantee when it comes to anything. Keep in mind, SBI's role in Jasmy is indeed a positive one, and it's a sign for the project's potential and future growth. Say what you want when it comes to Genki Oda being that guy, if you will, when it comes to the FSA, JVCEA, Bitpoint, and even SBI Japan is still one of their greatest, I guess you could say, aspects that Jasmy has. He's their plug. He's their connect. He always has been. I just hope that they never piss him off, basically. It's important to follow, of course, some of the industry developments and so on, but we're always going to follow this. Add up everything about these, what they're doing lately with the stable coins, and combine it with SBI's role, especially when it comes to Jasmy. I think we're going to start to see more and more things. Now, Jasmy, of course, is sitting at 0.006, but I think it's going to get a lot higher than that. So people are having, projections of 25 cents higher. I have it a lot higher than that, but conservatively speaking, at the end of the day, it's about how long you choose to hold it. Some people don't want to hold it for a couple years. Some people don't want to hold it for all the way up to 2030. We all have our own reasoning, but we'll all pay attention to this.